Hi, and welcome to our third video in factoring called grouping. And this is my personal favorite way of factoring, and it's called factoring by grouping. And you're doing exactly that. Basically, you are taking and you tend to have a 4-term polynomial, like the one given here, and you're going to group 2 terms together. Okay, so for example, you're going to group these 2 terms together and these 2 terms together. And what you're going to do is essentially factor out the greatest common factor in both. So if I take a look here, I have a y in both terms. So I'm going to factor out the y. And then I'm going to take a look at the 2x plus 6. And I notice that 2 is the GCF here. So you're going to factor out the 2. Okay? And then you have a situation where, look what's inside the parentheses. That's exactly the same. So you're going to take those parentheses and you essentially are going to factor those outside. And what you have left is the y and then plus the 2. And that's actually going to be inside one of your parentheses, and then the x plus 3 is going to be the other side of your parentheses, and then you can always check it. Okay, so let's go ahead, and this should be a short video, but let's go ahead and take care of business. So I'm going to take my first example and I'm going to group the first 2 together, group the second 2 together, and it's really easy when you have plus signs, okay, because you don't have to take into consideration the negatives. Okay, so this one is kind of like a first jumping forward. So we look at my first term here, and I'm going to try and color code as much as I can. So I'm going to take a look at my first term here, first set of parentheses. My GCF is going to be, again, y, because I have y in both terms. I don't have numbers in both terms, so I don't need to worry about that, and I don't have x's in both terms. So my GCF is y, so I'm going to factor out a y. What I have left is going to be x plus 8. Okay, plus. And then I'm going to take a look at my second set of parentheses and I'm going to say, well, what's my GCF here? I have numbers in both terms and they're both factors of 3. So I'm going to factor out a GCF of 3. And what I have left is x plus 8. And again, oh my goodness, both of these are exactly the same. So I'm going to factor both of those outside. So I have x plus 8, okay? And then what I have left is going to be y plus 3, and that's going to go inside of a second set of parentheses. So again, it's my favorite way because it actually makes sense. We've been factoring a GCF out for a little bit, and it's just almost like factoring out the GCF 3 times. Okay, now this next example here is I'm going to group these 2 together, and then we're going to do plus, and I'm going to group the second together. But keep in mind, I am keeping the negative. The negative is an important part here. So I'm going to factor out, I have x squared plus 3x. I can factor out an x for both of these. And what I have left is an x plus 3. Okay? Now, I'm going to take a look at my second set of parentheses. And I notice both terms are negative. So I'm going to factor out a negative. Okay? And both of these are even. So I'm going to factor out a 2. What I have left is going to be x plus 3. And oh my goodness, these are the same, so I'm going to factor those out. So I have x plus 3. And then whatever I have left here is x and negative 2. So my first set is going to be x minus 2. Okay, well, so 2 more examples, okay, and then we'll make this a short video. So here's my next one. I'm going to, again, group my first 2 together. Then I'm going to do like a plus and group these second two together, including that negative sign. Super important again. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at what my GCF is in here, and I can factor out. I notice I have x's in both terms, so I'm going to factor out an x, and I notice that both of these are divisible by 5, so I'm going to factor out a 5. So what I have left here is going to be 7y minus 1. Okay, now I see that I have a negative here, so I'm going to factor out a negative. And I notice that both of these numbers are divisible by 8, so I'm going to divide by 8, okay? So my next group of parentheses here is going to be negative 56y divided by 8, which is going to be a positive 7y. And then I'm going to have a negative 1. So that works out really nice because I can factor those terms out. So 7y minus 1. And then my first set of parentheses is going to be what's left. 5x minus 8. Okay, and keep in mind you can always check these by foiling out. Okay? All right, last set of examples. So I'm going to group my first two together, make that a plus, and group the second two, again keeping in mind that parentheses. And I chose these examples on purpose because of those negatives. Okay, they're not always going to have negatives, but in these cases they do. So I'm going to notice here for my first group I can factor out m's, and that's pretty much all I can factor out. So what I have left is going to be z minus 5h squared. Okay, and then I'm going to factor out a negative 5n, because I have n's in both of these. So I'm going to have negative 5n, so minus 5n. And what I have left is going to end up being a positive z minus 5h squared, which, oh my goodness, that is exactly what I wanted. Okay, so I'm going to factor those out. My first one is, my last factor here is going to be z minus 5h squared, because that's what I factor out. And what you have left is going to be my first set of parentheses, m minus 5n. And that is factoring by grouping. Again, you can always double check yourself. So for example, let me double check us right here for this one. Okay, I'm going to bring it back up here. If I wanted to double check ourselves, we could use the FOIL method. Okay, x times x is x squared, x times 3 is 3x, negative 2 times x is negative 2x, and negative 2 times 3 is a negative 6, which is what I got here. So I know I did that right. Okay, same thing for what I got down here. We could double check ourselves if that's what we wanted to do. Y plus 3 times x plus 8, and then y times x is yx, y times 8 is 8y, 3 times x is 3x, and 3 times 8 is 24, which is exactly what I was given to begin with. Okay, so this is just, like I said, my personal favorite way of factoring by grouping. If you have 4 terms in your polynomial, I think it's pretty easy. It's just basically doing GCFs 3 times and factoring that out. Okay, make sure you practice, and I'll see you in our last video.